Hello, Ivy here. This week's podcast is entitled Welcome to the Windsor Twilight Zone. To give a bit of context and introduction to this, and the framework for this Windsor Twilight Zone. The Twilight Zone was a TV series that first appeared on our screens in 1959. The idea for this unique TV template was the brainchild of an Emmy Award-winning writer, Rod Sterling. Rod Sterling became the host and wrote around 80 of the 150 episodes, or rather 150 plus episodes, that aired. Descriptions are abundant on the internet, including this one. It is a strange mix of horror, science fiction, drama, comedy and superstition. Sterling introduced each episode, and many of the black and white episodes concluded with a surprise ending. Actors such as Burt Reynolds, Roddy McDowall and Robert Redford made appearances in some of the more well-known stories. The first series ran from 1959 to 1964. The second series ran from 1985 to 1989. In 2019, a new Twilight Zone TV series was developed, based on the 1959 series. The narrator for this new series was one of the developers named Jordan Peele. This new series aired on CBS All Access and was renewed for a second series part of the way through of its first 10 episodes. The second series ended in 1921. The similarities with the British institution of a monarchy seems very clear to me, but I suspect that whilst many of you have thought of the firm in a variety of ways, perhaps a TV series known for content such as the cocktail I outlined at the beginning of this article was not one of them. When you read through the topics that were subjects in the 2019 series, you may reconsider. Just like the original series, each episode dealt with a different topic, looking at topics such as supernatural occurrences, racism, social issues, misinformation in the press. There is a previous SG UK podcast describing and outlining the differences between misinformation and disinformation. In its simplest form, I use the following words to remind me of the differences. Misinformation is presented as fact because no effort is made to check if it is indeed factual information, whereas disinformation is deliberately deceptive. Never gives details of a source for the information because they know there is none to back up the information presented, and therefore, naturally, it cannot be verified. It is used in the media to distract from more important newsworthy items, and deliberately sends people down rabbit holes of needless discussion, whilst the truth about other matters go under the radar. UK tabloids engage in both, going with whatever will garner the most clicks, which mean engagement and income generation. UK tabloids create news, they do not report on it. The invisible contract between the British royal family will be referred to from now on as BRF in the article, and I'll say it in full for the podcast, and its media has ensured that news is created to distract, rather than bring attention that should be of importance to UK residents. The UK royal reporters love to be in front of the camera and believe themselves to be media personalities rather than gossipers, because believe me, they are not journalists. To prove this point, members of the Royal Rota Group are more well known by their individual names as well as their group title. The British royal family is nowhere near that level of recognition. most of the senior royals are unknown to all but a few of the solid royal followers, most of whom are aged in the top quartile of age groups. The Queen is recognised around the globe by most people, and mainly respected as opposed to liked globally. Within the UK, the Queen is both respected and liked and loved in some cases. Prince Charles is recognised as the Queen's eldest son and next in line to become king when the Queen passes. Prince Charles is not popular generally in the UK or outside of it, mainly due to his treatment of his first wife, Princess Diana. He is popular among the older royalists in the UK, not least because they are of similar age or older, and the phrase we hear the most about his journey to become king one day is, "He has waited so long for it." He deserves it. As I say, this view is not shared further down the age categories we go. Traditional royalists have no regard or interest in competency of their monarch. It is all about being a figurehead, giving the impression of stability in the country. To his credit, Prince Charles knew he would have decades before he reached the throne. So he made efforts to carve out a career for himself and to have a purpose in his role before becoming king one day. Most of his projects are still going and are very successful. His popularity has not improved because of it, though, not least because research has shown, I have listed the information in the reference sources at the end of the article, and I've also spoken about it in previous podcasts, that on the whole, apart from a few patronages allocated by the Queen, members of the British royal family choose organisations or charities or causes to work on because they had a personal interest in the topic. It had nothing to do with what the country may have needed at the time, and like all sections of royal published accounts, and which I have commented on previously in articles and podcasts, at best, much of the information is vague, if mentioned at all, and none of it is actually measurable in the way every other business has to operate. Royal accounts are published every year, but there is no one out there holding their breath about its contents. It's more a box has been ticked for another year. There are a few questionable areas, but the climate in the UK is not to say too much, and an excuse will be given if an issue is raised too often or publicly. The Queen is reported as strong when it suits, and a fragile elderly person on other occasions, and it has been that way for decades, so don't be fooled that it is recent. Only the examples change, but the process has remained the same. The stories of Prince Philip's poor health ran on for years, and certainly in the last 12 months of his life, the tabloid eviscerated anyone who was deemed to rock the boat, and always cited how stressful it would be for Prince Philip at this stage in his life and health. When the Queen did or does things, she also is treated in the same way in the UK press, or the tabloids turn to their staple prey, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, and stir the embers of hatred that the tabloid created themselves in 2016 and have continued with it. The Sussexes are the standard essential elements in every tabloid, every day. And if there is a story due to break or has come into the public domain, guarantee that there will be a flurry of Sussex stories on one topic or more for several days. It is cruel and deliberate, with zero concern about the targets. The Duke of Cambridge, Prince William, the second in line of succession, is not even that popular with his own age group, and definitely less the younger age bracket researched. Supporters of the Cambridges come from the age group of Charles and above. Prince William is recognised in the UK and in some areas of the globe, but not many. And the reasons that he is recognised is mainly due to his treatment of the Sussexes, particularly Meghan. History will show that of the many arrows sent the way of the British royal family over the last 3 decades, treatment of the Sussexes is one of the arrows that hit home and continues to damage the host. Meanwhile, the British royal family think that they will overcome it and all will be fine and they will all live happily ever after. History will show that even though Prince William has age on his side, his low popularity and his obvious lack of competency and knowledge of basic economic and political matters will prove, if he ever actually makes it to the throne, that it will be his Achilles heel in the end. His reign will be much shorter than he and the older royalists believe. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. Very few outside of the UK recognise that title after all these years. Princess Anne is recognisable, but even within the UK, she is seen as a no-nonsense person, recognisable also for being the only daughter of the Queen. Famous in the UK for having the most work engagements compared to her siblings. Princess Anne is known in royal circles to be that of being the hardest worker, next to the Queen. Remember my comment earlier, and previously in various podcasts, the measurements of and definition of work is vastly different from those of us who live outside the royal bubble. Engagement can be anything from a few minutes to a few hours, so if a member of the British royal family attend a few places in a day, or even in a half day, they are classed as separate work engagements in the total. No one is concerned about the benefit or measurable outcome from such visits. A royal staple over the decades, and is done to persuade people that the British royal family work. When Meghan's first project, which the Royal Rota knew nothing about until the launch, was so hugely successful, and continues to be, the cookbook selling to a 6-figure sum in next to no time, and a bestseller along with providing funds for the renovation of the premises, and for others to be trained to set up their own kitchens in the community. The services from the original kitchen went on to provide meals in the community delivered to their doors. That is what you call measurable and beneficial outcomes, along with the improvements in the recovery journey after such horrific experiences and loss. Priceless. Yet, a certain member of that Royal Rota decided to go down the route of negativity by linking the hub kitchen to terrorism in a series of articles, all in an effort to downplay the success of the project and to ignore the obvious measurable benefits in comparison to the handshake and cutting ribbon approach to traditional work engagements. The Duke of York, Prince Andrew, known around the globe for most of the 80s and 90s as Air Miles Andy. Flying here and there and everywhere was the impression given. His flights were to other countries in his role as some kind of trade envoy. Another example of the monarch's offspring, just given titles to feed their nurtured egos from childhood, and sent off and asked to go, volunteered to go to various places, dealing with senior royals and diplomats and securing deals for the UK, officially. There is limited information in any tabloid over those years about the purpose of these deals, but always lots of photos of Prince Andrew shaking hands with someone or other who was happy with the said deal. To this day, I would still question the finer details, because things that have emerged since do not indicate or give the impression everything was as it should be. Just my impression. I have no evidence for that, not least because I have zero interest in activity like that, because I know it is sanctioned in more than one place, so there is no point someone like myself making a song and dance about it. One has to be extremely smart to lie continuously to increasing numbers of people, not least because one has to remember which tale was told to whom, etc. Eventually the truth will come out, particularly if that individual or individuals fall out of favour with the tabloids they have the invisible contract with. Now that Sussexes no longer work as senior royals, and indeed have moved out of the UK, the remaining members of the British royal family know that if they do not play ball when the media want them to, then they will be the next whipping boy or girl. Some members of the British royal family are probably less concerned, because they know things from within the British royal family, and knowledge, as they say, is power. Earl of Wessex, Prince Edward, is recognised within the UK and barely known outside of the UK. Younger people in the UK know very few of the British royal family, and if there is anyone who they will have either forget or have little knowledge, it's Prince Edward. Prince Edward does not have many engagements in any year, so even with the generous lack of meaningful measurements, there is no obvious value for money there. He was seen as being not too bad a chap in the last Commonwealth service, which the Sussexes attended in March 2020, because he took the trouble to try and make conversation with Harry and Meghan, whilst all the others put on a pantomime of playing the part of the ugly sisters from Cinderella, in front of the world's media. Whatever they thought they were doing backfired spectacularly. History books will show that event as one of the pivotal markers in the sand that captured people's interest worldwide as to the open hostility shown by senior members of the British royal family towards Harry and Meghan. Now, I could go on with much more, but those few backstories will serve as the backstory to a few episodes of the Windsor Twilight Zone, shown on Sussex Global TV Media Productions. The next backstory to this Windsor Twilight Zone is as follows. How to lose the Commonwealth in a few easy steps. There are 14 countries outside of the UK where the Queen is the head of state. Antigua and Barbuda, Australia, the Bahamas, Belize, Canada, Grenada, Jamaica, New Zealand, Papua New Guinea, Solomon Islands, St Kitts and Nevis, St Lucia, St Vincent and the Grenadines, and Tuvalu. The Queen appoints a representative, such as a Governor-General. Countries that are members of the Commonwealth but are not Commonwealth realms do not have the Queen as their monarch, instead electing a head of state from among their own people. All former British colonies turned republics, including Barbados, are still members of the Commonwealth. The Commonwealth does not make laws but provides trade links between countries. The majority of member countries have historical ties to the British Empire. The last two countries to join, Mozambique and Rwanda, never experienced British colonial rule. Next section, its own little chapter. British royal family being advocates for causes that are not practiced within the British royal family. A few examples. Beat Bullying, Child Bereavement Charity, Peacemakers International, and a few causes that they apparently they support but do not follow. Abuse, bullying, human rights, mental health, just to name but a few. We then have the pièce de résistance, the opening of Parliament and the Queen's speech. Prince Charles delivers the Queen's speech on her behalf due to mobility issues. Or, as one person posting on a social media platform said, listen to an unelected bloke standing in for his unelected mum, telling us what this minority elected government is going to do to us. End of quote. Another quote, British people literally on their knees for the royal family. Can't believe getting on your knees in front of a human being is ever necessary. At state opening of Parliament, Prince Charles and former mistress, Prince William and mistress's husband, all there, and people are on their knees for them. Another quote, respect is one thing. Bowing, in my opinion, is an act of worship. That is where these people are losing sight of. Another quote, grovelling for grifters and 3 adulterers. End of quote. Another, they are obsessed with upholding that stuff. So sad and weak. They are not secure in their position. End of quote. Another, they think titles that were created out of thin air to create a caste system in the UK is the be-all and end-all, when it means XXX to us. End of quote. I could have said and given so many more examples, but I think you get the idea. The next section. The twists in the tale of this piece, just like the original Twilight Zone TV series. There was always a morality tale at the end of most episodes, and therefore here I am just going to refer to the earlier points concerning members of the British royal family, and end on a few simple lessons that they all seem to have missed in the last 70 years. In fact, the last 40 years clearly demonstrates that the British royal family have been digging themselves deeper into the detritus that they created. And because they only employ people who tell them every day how fabulous they are and popular, no reflection has taken place and no learning. There is so much I could say about the huge errors made over the decades, but I do not have a media team that survives by protecting me, and the evidence is there about all those ordinary people who dared to have independent thought and how they fared afterwards. The evidence is there about all those people who had resources and wealth, but who also dared to speak against the official lines of the story, including those who are or were members of the British royal family over the centuries. So, I am not going to go there, but I will close this podcast by giving examples of a few incidents that relate to the current British royal family, and why they are now experiencing responses that they are not used to hearing or reading about. Despite the usual paid sycophants coming out like killer ants to deny and distract, they are making the situation worse for the British family, not better. The playbook they are using is old and not fit for purpose. The rhetoric is like a poor comedy sketch that only the royalists like, and fail to see that the majority of the people, both in and external to the UK, are not falling for it. The readership of the tabloids will fall for it because they get their oxygen from this kind of behaviour and verbal daily onslaughts. But all you are all doing is weakening the very institution you claim to believe in and support. So, for the next week or so, the media, printed and televised, will be wall-to-wall blame for the treatment of their golden child, because he was publicly shown the strength of emotion from swathes of people. These media clowns who masquerade as journalists earn their money and therefore keep their jobs by writing articles and appearing on TV each day inciting hatred against the same people and their supporters lately in an effort to appear to be hunting a different prey. And all those around them in both media zones tell them they are doing a great job. Viewing figures are good, and sales of tabloids have not tanked that today, etc. What you are all failing to see, but what you are about to see and feel in the coming years, is the tidal wave of change. If you stepped outside of your respective protective bubbles, you would not be surprised by all of this, but instead you believe that you are supporting the right institution and its people, and that they are loved and respected because it is their right to be there, etc. So you are all hanging your flag on that framework, and believe that you will force people into submission and bend them to your wishes, because that is what loyal subjects do. What you fail to recognise is that not everyone is a royalist, and even those that are or were are tired of this find a whipping boy or girl every decade or so, and incite discord and then hatred towards that person. As for the world outside of the UK, most could have cared less about what goes on inside the UK, and definitely had next to no interest in its monarchy. Most people around the world know of the Queen, but the rest are a mystery to most people, as I outlined earlier. The UK drew attention to the shenanigans done in plain sight in the UK, but sugar-coated it with propaganda to the outside world. At the heart of this approach, taken from an old A to Z booklet that was being used by all in royal circles to explain why certain people should be adored and respected because they are anointed to be in these roles, whilst the rest of the world use regularly updated satellite navigation units and therefore are able to read the room and know how to navigate to their desired destination. The world moved from not caring one way or another to wondering why all this effort to destroy one person or a couple, whilst ignoring the obvious serious incidents and behaviour elsewhere, which is far more damaging to the institution that is claimed must be protected at all cost. Those serious topics involving the same family soon drew attention, because it was not being reported on in the UK media, but it was definitely being written about and aired elsewhere. Now, because the UK cannot read the room and are still turning the pages of the old A to Z to find another route, the media mouthpieces continue driving on the same road to nowhere, but it is okay in their heads, because they are using expensive vehicles or flying in private planes or helicopters to go and smile and wave to the less fortunate and tell them they care about them, and then return to their gilded palaces and call those visits work. Another engagement figure to add to the tally that tells the UK public how their taxes are being well spent. As I have said more than once in several previous podcasts and articles over the years, the accounts published every year are just a smokescreen. Anything under £15,000 does not have to be reported on in terms of details. So any expense below that figure is hidden. So whether you fly to the supermarket or to one of the many houses that other people pay for, the UK taxpayer does not need to know. The British royal family need honest advisors, and they need to learn how to swallow the bitter pills that come along with the caviar. Otherwise, their lifespan as an institution will end sooner than they think. Either way, the monarchy will end in decades, not centuries, and the way it is going, it won't take many decades either. In Twilight Zone style, let's look at the takeaways from this podcast for people within and who provide services to the firm. A couple of quotes from social media platforms again along the way. British royal family never paid any tribute to Dr. Martin Luther King in any part of the Queen's reign. Yet, out of the blue, to commemorate the historical figure and his contribution to the civil rights movement, Buckingham Palace had the band of the Grenadier Guards play Stevie Wonder's version of Happy Birthday during the changes of the Guards earlier this year. Another bullet point: the bad optics from the ceremonial opening of Parliament and all the ridiculous pomp and pageantry that surround that. And lastly, the continued excessive use of the Uber helicopter and private jets just days before their environmental programme won a BAFTA award. The treatment of Meghan, the Duchess of Sussex, right from the beginning, that the UK press embarked upon with their sanction/advice from the British royal family, will be one of the biggest mistakes any monarchy anywhere has ever made. The unexpected ripple effect that the British royal family and its media never once anticipated has hit them like a tidal wave. Their response is to hold up the figurehead monarchy as a reason to accept everything and never question and go along with it out of love for the country, totally ignoring the dangers of inciting hatred, including an important detail that it is against the law. Only the Queen is above the law. The rest of the family are not above the law in most circumstances, but they have been treated with white privilege as though they are all monarchs. The couple, who the institution and its media treated like prey, ultimately had to leave the UK for their safety and their mental health. Now the world, who had been reading about certain things, sat up and took notice. Most of those who believed that the couple were exaggerating their treatment started to inquire from other sources than UK tabloids and began to see another story of events appear. This was the start of the UK media being seen as the main tools of distraction, and the conclusion was that it could only happen with the approval of the monarchy. The silence of the monarchy throughout all the years since the abuse commenced made them complicit. Simple as. The obvious double standards of reporting between the Sussexes and everyone else in the royal family was another nail. The legal process dragging on for years about one member of the British royal family, but barely appearing in UK press. Excuse being that innocent until proven guilty was sometimes used by media pundits paid to give the same line of rhetoric. The world noticed. The treatment of the first black person to enter the royal family, and her treatment started to emerge on international news networks. The Sussex Squad was formed by two very brave ladies when all the onslaught on Meghan really took hold. Most of the early squad members were targeted and treated very badly by media personnel. Over time, a growing number of bots and people started to appear on social media platforms, and the actual humans admitted in some cases that they were paid to post hateful messages. As to who was paying for this, and much more over the years, will no doubt be a future podcast in years to come. Initially, the squad were referred to as bots, but as time went on, the UK media sycophants realised that this was a fast-growing movement, and it comprised of highly intelligent people who were way beyond the media hacks, who were just used to peddling gossip. Now they had a real force to contend with. Every time they started their nonsense and cruelty towards Meghan, and then the media started on Harry too, because he supported his wife. It became predictable whenever there was a less than positive story about a member of the British royal family that an onslaught of distraction stories were made about Meghan, and often with her father's side of the family involved in some way. The international community was watching and reaching conclusions each week. The royal family and its media have yet to learn the lessons from Princess Diana, and how her life was made a living hell, and then her ultimate untimely death. The UK establishment will forever be tainted by all the events relating to Diana, and they will forever be reminded each time they are challenged about something in the future. The treatment of Meghan whilst in the British royal family led to her having suicidal ideations, and the refusal to help, along with royal HR discussing confidential details about the suicidal thoughts with royal reporters, led to them increasing the psychological abuse, not reducing. Receipts exist for this and more. The history books will not be kind about a whole host of things. Every action leads to a reaction, and the squad has receipts for everything. The Sussex Squad has now grown across the globe and exists in almost 90 countries. The support for the Sussexes is unwavering and is a lifetime one. No member is paid for what they do, despite some believing otherwise. All actions are done out of good hearts and fairness. We support every charity the Sussexes support, and many, many more who do similar work around the world. All donations are made by people direct to the charities. The squad promotes the charities and the fundraiser, and the charities themselves receive the funds. The charities receive all monies from whatever source, they receive it direct. That is what you call positive activity. We don't spend time inciting hate, but we will challenge lies in a constructive way. Engagement with haters and media is minimal. In my case, I blocked them all years ago. And as new ones appear and start their nonsense, I block and mute. They rarely appear on my timeline. I have no interest in what they have to say. The How to Lose the Commonwealth tour was doomed to failure. In fact, that model of interaction between the UK and the Commonwealth nations is really the UK hanging on by its fingernails to the remnants of the old empire. Colonial thinking through and through. The audacity to invite yourselves to these nations and then put all the cost on the nation itself, who never invited the royal family in the first place, is reprehensible. This most recent one, some of those nations told the royal family they did not want to visit, but in the old colonial style, the royal family went anyway and made them pay for the privilege. The optics of the Jamaica visit and the whole basket of entitlement that the UK landed in planes in places where they were not welcome was astounding. It was all done for photographs to put in the annals of history, to keep the impression of the same old, same old. This time, however, other records exist and will also contribute to the literature of history. Walking through forests and shrubland in evening wear was comedy in its worst form. Grimacing with the natives is not a good look. Neither is fake rhythm. Visibly shrinking away from being too close to people of colour was in plenty of supply and goes with years of evidence. The older members of the firm have the smile and the physical gestures down to a fine art. No doubt, in many people's minds, that the mindset of all institutions is the same, and the treatment of Meghan, whilst in the clutches of that family, and the ongoing behaviour since they left the UK, proves that every day. Posing for photo ops in setting that match images of the empire was another death now. Touching fingers of black people through mesh fences and all the smiling faces of black children and the grimaces of the royals is a photo opportunity that the British royal family will never, ever live down. The opening of Parliament and the delivery of the Queen's speech may be tradition, but it really should not be on our television screens. For all those who claim to love that side of pomp and ceremony, let them pay via subscription for such events. I wager that you will soon see how devoted the UK people are. A group of privileged people looking down on most of the others in that setting, who also believe that they are special, is not a good look. Spending a six-figure sum of money to transport the crown in its own vehicle is obscene, made worse by the fact the jewels on the said crown were stolen, like so many other artefacts, and the sheer tomfoolery of transporting an exhibit to a ceremony that had no need to be on our TV screen other than for people to pay if they wish to see such things in. The venue was lined in gold, every surface in ornate carvings in gold. Obscene. The purpose of the event is to read out the government wishes for the future. For example, changes in the UK's adherence to human rights as it wishes to water down its commitment to it. Refers to restrictions on protests in the future is another element. And let me just make this clear here, I did not watch that ceremony, like I don't watch anything to do with any of that side of things. I'm going on photographs and reports. I do not watch anything of that nature. I object to it and it goes against my principles, and I gave up my TV licence in 2017 and have no regrets, and I will never, ever replace it. The pretence of this process is that the monarch and the government are separate, and the monarchy is there to merely read out the instructions of the government. If that is true, it begs the question as to the purpose of the monarchy. If in reality it is the government who decides, then it is a very expensive way to have a narrator. If it is a joint decision, it still opens up all kinds of questions for the need to have a superfluous, unelected group of people involved in government affairs. Unelected and with no proof of competence, but who can have laws made where the monarchy is exempt from having to adhere to it, such as equality and diversity legislation, and not to mention environmental requirements. The monarchy just recently were awarded a prize for an environmental project that the monarchy itself does not have to adhere to. It is a strange way to bring all this attention to matters that do not impact the privileged, but have enormous privilege with those, and in comparison to those who are struggling to live from day to day. So we have people who are privileged, given enormous privilege, reading out things that will have an impact on those who are not privileged. Where is the sense in that? Choosing to publish a photo of the second in line of succession being hugged by a homeless person, from all the photos that were no doubt taken on that day, someone decided to choose and to use that one. If the thought was to show how compassionate the British royal family are, it backfired. Yes, it did show less of a grimace with the physical contact, and there were no chain fences, but it all seemed rather forced in the photo, and it does not alter the fact that the couple concerned arrived and left in their private helicopter for a journey that would have taken approximately an hour by car. And I am assuming that the homeless man was still homeless after they left. Optics. Not a good look. I have added the following item at the last minute, so I'm not going to say much here other than the one member of the British royal family who its media continuously report that he is constantly incandescent with rage is not doing him a favour. Quite the opposite, actually. Recently, the said royal was booed publicly at a football match. This protected person is only surrounded by people who tell him what he wants to hear. So I imagine it was somewhat of a shock that people were not respectfully silent. Far from it. The image I saw, he looked very angry indeed. The official reports in papers are stating he was crying. Yeah, right. Now the media offensive, using that old A to Z book that is falling apart, had one royal reporter asking, what is happening with that report about Meghan bullying her staff? They really think they are doing something here. First of all, that same royal reporter was the same individual who, in the week before the Oprah interview, decided to announce that there was a bullying investigation about to start relating to Meghan's treatment of her staff. Yeah, the timing. They really think they are doing something here. A bullying report that was claimed to have started days before the Oprah interview, and in fact that there was a file from 2018. And here we are, or at that time, with the Oprah interview, it was 2020. A bullying report was someone decided, let's announce this in the run-up to the Oprah interview, like lots of other nonsense that was going on in those 7 days before an interview took place. Gives you the thought that people had some concerns about what might be revealed in that interview. Here we are, 2 years later, still waiting to hear the outcome of that bullying investigation. I am sure Meghan's legal team are holding their breath too. An investigation that in the real world would take days, around 10, and at most weeks. But yeah, let's hear what the institution has to report back on after 2 years. That is a legal action on many fronts, just waiting in the wings. This is all about distraction, to get people talking about the staple chew toy for the royal family, rather than the fact that a very public message was sent recently in that football match, and the establishment don't like it. Meghan has had over 5 years of this in multiple articles every day, much, much worse than people booing, under instruction from this family. Yet here we are, being told a certain person shed tears because of public humiliation. It is apparently okay for the black woman to be maligned daily with lies, though. The moral of this podcast is this: do not push your wealth and privilege to people who work hard to make ends meet. Do not spend six-figure sums of money that you have not earned in the first place to read out a set of instructions to people who are increasing numbers have to choose to eat or heat their homes. Too many food banks are springing up in a country which is meant to be well developed. A country with a good economy does not have its vulnerable, hungry and cold, and they do not want to see people preaching to them who live off the labours of other people. Learn to read the room. When a nation says it does not want you to visit, do not visit. Worse, do not visit anyway and then charge them for the expenses of it. Do not have a 4-day celebration of the Queen's Jubilee when there are people living from hand to mouth. And for those that are comfortable, it is not a problem. But maybe people should think of others who are not. It is an affront. UK tabloid media had a poll recently asking its readers to vote whether or not they would boo Harry and Meghan on the balcony of Buckingham Palace. That was before they were told Sussexes have refused to be on the balcony anyway. Now we have a man-child supposedly crying because he was publicly booed. There is an old adage that says that whatever you put out, you will receive. I have said it before that all these boomerangs of hate sent out to the Sussexes will return one day. It seems one came back very quickly. The Twilight Zone covered genres of fantasy, science fiction, absurdism, dystopian fiction, suspense, horror, supernatural drama, black comedy, and psychological thriller, macabre and unexpected twists. I think I have covered all of those today. My theme for the firm and its media is to learn to read the room. The behaviour in the Commonwealth Service in 2020 was the tidal wave of opinion changing and moving quicker in support of the Sussexes because of the nature of treatment towards them, when they had done nothing wrong other than choosing to leave and be self-financing. That unprofessional behaviour in a place of worship, on the back of 3 years of abuse, and then to continue with that abuse across borders, was a classic not reading the room. To then force yourselves onto Commonwealth nations, despite them telling you not to come, is another example. Requiring only black members of the Commonwealth to need visas to come to the UK is another example. You all, meaning monarchy and its associates, need to wake up and smell the coffee. There are people out there in the world suffering every day to breaches in their basic rights, and there is a growing number in the UK. For all the reasons above, the foundation of the monarchy looks increasingly weak already, and it is only respect for the Queen by some people that it is not even weaker. There is no place in a modern society for a monarchy, and the next two in line of succession for the UK monarchy are not strong candidates to change that state of affairs. Neither of the two of them came out of the Queen's Speech ceremony with glowing colours for different reasons, and the impoverished in the UK will suffer more. The lights in the UK are going out one by one, and soon we will need headlamps to avoid all the sewage flowing through our waterways. What a glorious future lies ahead for the British people, who do not live abroad like the owners of all the tabloids who sanction all the content I have discussed today in their papers. I have decided not to use any slides, any video footage for this podcast. I think the message within it is serious enough for just the audio. I also want people and hope that people do imagine for themselves various things that have gone on to individuals within the UK based on the things that I've said. I've given some examples, but I'm sure we can all think of many that go with them. And yes, it is like being in a series of the Twilight Zone. That's all for this week. I will speak to you all soon and look forward to speaking with you, communicating with you in the comments section. Have a good week. Bye from Ivy. Bye.